The kingdom celebrated, music echoed through every street, golden banners danced in the wind, fireworks painted the evening sky. Today was the wedding of the century. Everyone smiled, everyone cheered. Except the groom. Prince Adrian Blackwood stood silently before the palace window. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark black hair, cold blue eyes. Adrian was a man feared throughout the kingdom. Cold, silent. His only confidant was David, the loyal aide who had stood beside him for years. After the tragic death of his parents, Adrian became the kingdom's only surviving heir. The crown passed to him, but so did an ancient royal tradition. According to the kingdom's custom, no king could rule alone for long. A queen had to stand beside him, not only to preserve the royal bloodline, but to bring stability to the throne. The royal council wasted no time arranging a marriage, and the noble family chosen had only one daughter. Her name was Lucy. Rumours throughout the kingdom claimed she was painfully unattractive, a woman no prince would willingly choose. Adrian accepted the arrangement without protest. The wedding day arrived. Adrian never once asked to see her portrait. He didn't care. To him, marriage was another royal obligation. It was never about love. It was simply another duty he had to bear. Nothing more, yet inside, he was terrified. Not of war, not of enemies, not of death. Marriage. His hands trembled slightly. Only one person noticed. David, his royal aide, his bodyguard, his closest friend. David smiled gently. "You'll survive." Adrian sighed. "I doubt it." David laughed. "You've fought assassins." "I know." "You've defeated armies." "I know." "So why does marrying one woman scare you?" Adrian looked away. Because David already knew. Ever since childhood, Adrian believed he wasn't enough. His father spent years telling him exactly that. "You'll never be a great king. You'll disappoint everyone. Nobody could ever truly love you." Eventually, he believed every word. Even now, at 29 years old, he still believed it. "The carriage has arrived," David said quietly. Adrian closed his eyes. It begins. Hours later, the royal cathedral overflowed with nobles. Thousands watched, waiting, whispering, curious, because nobody had ever seen the bride. Rumors spread. Some claimed she was horribly scarred. Others said she hid behind veils because she was unbelievably ugly. Some even joked the prince would faint when he saw her. Adrian had heard every rumor, and none of them mattered. Looks weren't why he was afraid. He was afraid she would look at him and realize he wasn't worth loving. The cathedral doors slowly opened. Silence swept through the hall. Everyone turned. A young woman stepped inside, hidden beneath a delicate white veil. Graceful, elegant, every step soft, calm. David glanced toward Adrian. The prince wasn't looking. His eyes remained fixed on the floor. His heartbeat thundered. The ceremony passed like a dream. Voices blurred together. Vows were spoken, promises exchanged, hands joined. Neither truly looked at the other, not yet. Finally, the priest smiled warmly. "You may lift your bride's veil." Time stopped. Adrian slowly reached forward. His fingers hesitated. Then, he lifted the veil, and immediately, his heart missed a beat. Lucy Ashford looked up at him. Large emerald green eyes, long chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, soft flawless skin, gentle pink lips, a face so breathtaking. Even the cathedral gasped. She wasn't ugly, not even close. She was the most beautiful woman Adrian had ever seen. Lucy smiled nervously, a small, beautiful smile. That terrified him even more, because someone this beautiful could never truly love someone like him. The ceremony ended. Applause filled the cathedral. Flowers showered over the newlyweds. People celebrated. But Adrian barely spoke, barely smiled, barely even looked at Lucy again. She noticed immediately. Inside the royal carriage, silence sat between them. Lucy folded her hands nervously. "Did I do something wrong?" Adrian stared out the window. "No, Another silence. Then, her voice grew smaller. Why won't you look at me? His heart twisted painfully. Because he wanted to. More than anything. But every time he looked at her, he remembered she deserved someone better. Someone worthy. Not him. I've had a long day. That was all he said. Lucy nodded slowly. Oh. She looked down, hiding the disappointment in her eyes. David rode another carriage behind them, watching everything, and quietly sighed. He understood Adrian better than anyone. The prince wasn't cold. He was afraid. Afraid that if he loved someone, she would eventually leave, just like everyone else. That evening, Lucy entered her new bedroom. It was magnificent. A royal suite, elegant furniture, golden chandeliers, large windows overlooking the palace gardens. Yet somehow, it felt empty. She sat quietly on the edge of the enormous bed, still wearing part of her wedding gown, waiting. Surely, her husband would come. Hours passed, night deepened, candles burned lower. The door never opened. Across the palace, Adrian stood alone on a balcony, unable to move, unable to gather the courage. David eventually found him. You left her alone. I know. David frowned. She's your wife. I know. Then go to her. Adrian laughed bitterly. What if she realizes she made a mistake? David stared at him. She married a prince. No, Adrian whispered. She married me. Silence. David stepped closer. You looked at her today. Adrian nodded. And? I've never seen anyone so beautiful. Another pause. Exactly. David finally understood. Adrian wasn't rejecting Lucy. He was rejecting himself. Meanwhile, Lucy quietly cried herself to sleep, holding her wedding bouquet, wondering why the man she had just married couldn't even look at her. Outside, rain began falling softly against the palace windows. Neither of them knew it yet, but two lonely hearts had already begun breaking for each other. They just didn't realize they were breaking for the same reason. Morning arrived quietly. Golden sunlight poured through the palace windows. Servants hurried through the halls. The castle was alive, but inside the royal dining room, silence ruled. Lucy sat alone at the enormous table. Breakfast had already been prepared. Fresh bread, fruit, tea, everything a queen could ask for. Yet she barely touched any of it. Every few seconds, she glanced toward the door, waiting, hoping, praying. Her husband would join her. The door finally opened. Her heart leaped. Adrian entered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black royal uniform. Tall, elegant, handsome enough to steal anyone's breath. A smile appeared on Lucy's face. Good morning. Adrian paused for just a second, then nodded. Morning. He poured himself coffee, never looking directly at her. The silence became unbearable. Lucy tried again. Did you sleep well? Yes. I'm glad. Another silence. She searched desperately for something to say. Do you usually have breakfast this early? Yes. Oh. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. After less than 3 minutes, Adrian placed his empty cup down. I have work. Then he walked away, without another word. The door closed. Slowly, her smile disappeared. She whispered to herself, he really doesn't like me. Outside the dining room, Adrian stopped walking. His breathing became uneven. David had been waiting nearby. You left again. Adrian rubbed his forehead. I know. She looked excited to see you. I know, David sighed. So why do you keep running? Adrian laughed bitterly. Did you see her? David blinked. What? She's beautiful. I noticed. Adrian looked down. Someone like her deserves better. A pause. Not this. David stared at his friend. You think you're doing her any good? Adrian remained silent. Let me tell you the honest truth. You're hurting her. Those words followed Adrian the entire day. Meanwhile, Lucy wandered through the Palais Gardens alone. The roses were blooming, Beers sang softly, everything looked magical, yet she had never felt more lonely. She watched older couples strolling together through the city beyond the palace gates, laughing, talking, holding hands. She smiled sadly. I wonder what that's like. Your Majesty? Lucy turned. David bowed respectfully. She smiled politely. You don't have to bow every time. David laughed. I'll get fired. She giggled softly. The sound surprised even herself. David smiled. I finally made you laugh. Lucy looked away. It hasn't been easy. David's smile faded. He knew exactly why. He isn't a bad man. Lucy looked toward the palace. I know. He's just... David searched for the right words. Complicated. Lucy nodded slowly. I've noticed. The two walked through the gardens together. David showed her hidden fountains, ancient statues, beautiful flower paths, places Adrian loved visiting alone. David was quietly teaching Lucy about the man she married. He likes reading. Lucy looked surprised. He does. David smiled. He owns thousands of books. I would have never guessed. He loves the rain. Another surprise. Really? He watches storms from the west balcony. Lucy smiled softly. What else? David chuckled. He pretends he hates sweets. But he hides chocolate in his office. Lucy laughed again. A genuine laugh. Far away. Standing inside his office window. Adrian accidentally saw them. Lucy smiling. Laughing. Happy. His chest tightened. David had made her smile. When he couldn't. Instead of jealousy, he felt ashamed. That evening, Lucy saw a small package rested outside her bedroom door. No note, no name. Inside, she found a beautiful collection of novels, exactly the kind she'd once loved reading as a little girl. She smiled, confused. Who sent these? No servant knew. Only David and Adrian knew. Because David had mentioned a conversation he'd shared with Lucy, she had casually confessed how much she loved reading whenever she wanted to escape reality. Adrian quietly visited the palace librarian and requested a collection of books he believed she would enjoy. He had purchased every single one. But he would never admit it. Late that night, Lucy sat near the fireplace reading. A gentle smile rested on her face. Outside, Adrian quietly walked past her room. The door had been left slightly open. He stopped, just for a moment. She looked peaceful, comfortable, beautiful. He smiled, a real smile, one nobody ever saw, except David, who happened to be walking down the hallway. David folded his arms. You bought the books. Adrian immediately looked away. Maybe. David laughed. You know? What? Normal husbands usually give gifts personally. Adrian sighed. I can't. Why? What if she thinks I'm trying too hard? David stared at him. You are trying too hard. Adrian frowned. What? Trying too hard to stay away? Silence. Long silence. Later that night, Lucy carefully placed the books beside her bed, then whispered into the quiet room, Thank you. She didn't know who she was thanking, but somehow she hoped it was Adrian, because despite everything, despite the silence, despite the distance, despite the loneliness, a tiny part of her still believed there was kindness hidden somewhere inside her husband, and hidden behind another palace door. Adrian quietly whispered something too. I hope you're happy. He never realized. The only thing preventing her happiness was him. The palace slowly began to feel less frightening, not because Adrian had changed. He still kept his distance, still buried himself in work, still spoke only when necessary. But somehow, Lucy no longer felt completely alone. She had the gardens, the library, the palace staff, and David. David became the only person she could truly talk to, never crossing boundaries, never disrespecting the prince, simply being kind. They often walked through the gardens together, talking about books, music, travel, childhood memories, sometimes They laughed so loudly that servants smiled as they passed. Lucy hadn't laughed like that in years. From the palace balcony, Adrian watched them again. His chest tightened, not because he suspected anything. He trusted David with his life. It hurt because David could make Lucy smile, and he couldn't. He quietly turned away. I failed again. Later that evening, David entered Adrian's office. The prince sat buried beneath endless paperwork. He never looked up. She's smiling again. Adrian's pen stopped moving. Good, David sighed. She smiles with everyone. Silence. But not with you. Adrian closed his eyes. I know. You can't keep hiding forever? Adrian laughed bitterly. I'm not hiding. David raised an eyebrow. No? Another silence. Then Adrian finally admitted, I'm afraid. David frowned. Of what? Adrian stared out the window. David almost lost his patience. Adrian. The prince remained silent. You haven't even given her the chance to know you. I know. You've already decided she'll reject you. I know. And you're punishing both of you because of something that hasn't even happened. Adrian couldn't answer. Because David was right. The next morning, Lucy entered the dining room again, expecting another silent breakfast. Instead, she froze. Adrian was already there, waiting. He looked up briefly. Then, for the first time since their wedding, he pulled out the chair beside him. You can sit. Lucy blinked. Really? He nodded once. She slowly sat down, trying not to smile too much. The silence returned, but this time, it wasn't painful. It was simply quiet. Halfway through breakfast, Lucy accidentally reached for the same teapot Adrian did. Their fingers touched, only for a second, yet both immediately pulled away. Lucy looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. Adrian quickly shook his head. No. Another pause. You weren't in the way. Lucy smiled softly. So, you're capable of being polite. For a split second, Adrian smiled. Barely. But she saw it. And somehow, that tiny smile became the best part of her morning. Across the table, Adrian secretly noticed something too. Lucy smiled with her whole face. Her eyes sparkled. It made his heart beat strangely, dangerously. He immediately looked back at his coffee, trying to ignore the unfamiliar feeling growing inside him. Days passed. Slowly, very slowly, things became easier. Sometimes Adrian greeted her first. Sometimes he asked whether she'd eaten. Sometimes he quietly left books outside her room, never admitting they were from him. Lucy always smiled when she found them. She began looking forward to each new morning. Maybe, just maybe, her husband didn't hate her after all. Then, everything changed. It happened just after sunset. Rain hammered against the palace windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. A royal messenger arrived on horseback. Completely soaked, breathing heavily, he rushed into the palace carrying a sealed letter. For Her Majesty. Lucy accepted it with a confused smile. Thank you. She noticed the royal seal from her hometown. Her heart suddenly raced. Why would her family send an urgent letter? She carefully broke the seal, then unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved across the words. Once, twice, 3 times. She stopped breathing. The paper slipped from her trembling fingers. No, barely a whisper. David immediately caught her before she collapsed. Lucy! She looked at him, completely broken. Her voice shattered. My family. She couldn't finish. David picked up the letter. His face slowly drained of colour. Your Majesty, we regret to inform you that Lord and Lady Ashford, along with every member of the Ashford household, were brutally murdered during an armed attack late last night. No survivors were found. The attackers escaped before authorities arrived. Silence. Absolute silence. Lucy let out a sound unlike anything David had ever heard. Not a scream. Not a cry. A soul breaking. She collapsed to her knees. No. Tears streamed uncontrollably. No, no, no. She shook violently. They can't be gone. Her breathing became uneven. I just... A sob escaped. I just saw them. She buried her face in her hands. My mother, my father, my brothers, they're gone. Across the palace. Adrian heard the cries. His heart stopped. He had never heard pain like that before. He rushed into the hall, then froze. Lucy was on the floor, completely shattered. David stood helplessly beside her, the letter still in his hand. Adrian slowly took it, read it, once, then again. His jaw tightened, his chest burned. He looked at Lucy, curled into herself, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Every instinct inside him screamed, go to her, hold her, tell her she's not alone. His feet refused to move. Fear chained him where he stood. He hated himself, absolutely hated himself, because the woman he had secretly begun falling in love with was breaking apart before his eyes, and he couldn't even find the courage to hug his own wife. David looked at Adrian. Their eyes met. David silently pleaded, please, but Adrian remained frozen, watching the woman he loved cry alone. Days passed after the funeral. The palace had never felt so empty. The halls remained silent. The servants spoke only in whispers. Even the birds outside seemed quieter, as though the entire kingdom mourned with its queen. Lucy barely left her room. She stopped reading, stopped smiling, stopped eating. She simply sat by the window, staring into nothing. Summertime is greying. Summertime is completely still. The pain had exhausted even her tears. Adrian watched from afar. Every single day, every single night, he noticed untouched meals returning from her room. He noticed the dark circles beneath her eyes. He noticed how thin she'd become. Every sight tore another piece from his heart. Inside his office, he stood staring out the window. David whitely entered. You have a slow? Adrian didn't answer. You haven't eaten either? Still nothing. Finally, Adrian spoke. I don't know how, David frowned. How what? How to comfort her? His voice was barely above a whisper. I've rehearsed it 100 times. A pause. I walk to her door. Another pause. Then I turn around. David sighed deeply. Because you're afraid. Adrian nodded. What if she doesn't want me there? David stared at him. And what if she does? Silence. You'll never know if you keep running. That evening, Adrian stood outside Lucy's bedroom. Again, his hand hovered over the door. Knock. Don't knock. Knock. Don't. Several long seconds passed. Finally, he quietly placed a small tray of warm tea and freshly baked pastries outside her door. He gave a gentle knock, then turned and walked away before she could see him. Minutes later, Lucy opened the door. She looked down. The tray, still warm. There was no note, no name, yet somehow she knew. A tiny smile appeared through her sadness. He came. Not inside, not to speak, but he came. It was enough to make fresh tears fall, not tears of grief, tears of gratitude. Later that night, heavy rain began falling. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning flashed outside the palace windows. Lucy hated storms, always had. As a child, she would hide beneath blankets whenever thunder struck. Her mother would hold her until she fell asleep. Now, there was nobody. Another loud crack of thunder shook the palace. Lucy flinched, her breathing quickened. She looked toward the empty hallway. The palace suddenly felt far too large, far too lonely. She hesitated, then quietly left her room. The corridors were dark. Only candlelight guided her steps. She eventually stopped outside one door. Adrian's bedroom. Her heart pounded. She raised her hand, then lowered it again. What am I doing? Another crash of thunder echoed. She closed her eyes, then softly knocked. Inside, Adrian looked up from the book he wasn't actually reading. A knock? At this hour? He walked to the door, opened it. Lucy stood there, wearing a simple white nightdress, barefoot, holding her pillow tightly against her chest. She looked fragile, almost childlike, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," her voice trembled. "I know it's late." Adrian couldn't speak. I... She looked down. "I'm scared of thunderstorms." Silence. "I was wondering," another flash of lightning lit the hallway, "if I could stay here tonight." Adrian's heart nearly stopped. She quickly added, "You don't have to talk to me." A nervous laugh. "I'll sleep on the couch." I just... Another pause. "I don't want to be alone." Adrian opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lucy misunderstood the silence. "It's okay." She forced a smile. "I'll go." She turned. Then, another deafening crack of thunder. She instinctively shut her eyes. Adrian finally found his voice. "Stay." Lucy slowly looked back. He stepped aside, leaving the doorway open. She smiled softly. "Thank you." The room was enormous, elegant, simple. Books lined one wall, a fireplace burned quietly. Lucy looked around curiously. "So this is your room?" Adrian nodded. She noticed only one bed. "Are you sure?" He simply nodded again. "You can take the bed." Her eyes widened. "What about you?" "I'll use the sofa." Lucy frowned. "That's not fair." "I'm fine." She wanted to argue. Instead, she climbed into one side of the large bed, keeping as much distance as possible. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For bothering you." Adrian looked away. "You didn't." Within minutes, Lucy fell asleep, completely exhausted. The pillow still hugged tightly against her chest. Outside, rain continued falling. Inside, Adrian remained sitting in the chair beside the fireplace, unable to sleep, unable to look away. He watched her peaceful face. The sadness she'd carried for days had disappeared in sleep. She looked beautiful, gentle, safe, without thinking. He quietly walked closer, sat on the edge of the bed. Carefully, almost fearfully, he brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face. Lucy stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Adrian smiled, the smallest smile. "You deserve so much better than me," he whispered. "So why..." A pause. "Did you choose to trust me tonight?" Lucy unconsciously shifted in her sleep. Without realizing, she moved closer, her hand lightly rested against his arm. Adrian froze. She was still asleep. She had no idea. Yet, she hadn't let go. His heartbeat became impossibly loud. For several minutes, he simply sat there, looking at the woman who had slowly become the center of his world. Then, very carefully, he covered her with the blanket she had kicked away, lowered the room's lights, and stayed beside her until dawn. Not because she asked him to, because he wanted to. Being close to her didn't scare him. It felt like home. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains. The storm had passed. The palace was quiet once again. Lucy slowly opened her eyes. For a brief moment, she vågade where she was there she remembered. Adrian's room. Her cheeks immediately warmed. She quickly sat up. The other side of the bed was empty. She looked around. Adrian stood near the balcony, already dressed. A cup of coffee rested in his hand. He turned as he heard her move. "Good morning." Lucy blinked. He spoke first. A small smile appeared on her lips. "Good morning." For a few seconds, neither spoke. Lucy carefully climbed out of bed. "I'm sorry I invaded your room." Adrian shook his head. "You didn't." Another pause. "I actually..." He hesitated. "Didn't mind." Lucy looked at him, surprised. Her heart skipped. Just then, a servant knocked softly. "Your Highness." Adrian opened the door. The servant entered carrying breakfast. 2 trays. "You ordered breakfast?" Adrian avoided her eyes. "Yes? For both of us?" A slight nod. Lucy smiled. a genuine, beautiful smile. Thank you. Adrian felt his heartbeat become strangely uneven. They ate together. Not much conversation, but every few minutes. Lucy caught Adrian secretly looking at her. Each time, he immediately looked away. It made her smile. Across the hallway, David watched everything. He quietly laughed to himself. Finally. Later that afternoon, David entered Adrian's office. So? Adrian looked confused. So what? You spent the night together? Adrian nearly choked on his tea. Nothing happened. David burst into laughter. I didn't say anything happened. Adrian sighed deeply. You enjoy making me suffer? A little. David sat opposite him. You look happier. Adrian stared at the documents on his desk. Do I? You smiled. I did not. You've smiled 3 times today. Adrian frowned. I don't smile. David laughed even harder. You do now. Meanwhile, Lucy wandered into the palace library. She couldn't stop smiling either. One of the older maids noticed immediately. You look happy today. Lucy blushed. Do I? The maid smiled knowingly. Very. Lucy lowered her eyes, remembering waking up in Adrian's room, remembering breakfast together, remembering how gentle he'd been. Maybe he really didn't hate her. Days passed. Something quietly changed between them. Every morning, they shared breakfast. Every evening, Adrian asked whether she'd eaten. Sometimes. He even walked beside her through the palace gardens. Neither spoke much. Their silence had become its own language. One afternoon, Lucy found Adrian sitting alone beneath an old oak tree, reading. She smiled. So, this is where you disappear. Adrian looked up. A faint smile appeared. It's quiet here. Lucy sat beside him. What are you reading? He silently handed her the book. She looked surprised. You trust me with your favorite book? He nodded. I trust you. The words were simple, yet they echoed inside Lucy's heart. I trust you. She truly looked into Adrian's eyes. She didn't see a cold prince. She saw a lonely man, someone who had spent years hiding behind silence. That evening, the palace hosted a royal banquet. Nobles from across the kingdom attended. Music filled the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Lucy descended the grand staircase wearing an elegant emerald gown. The entire room turned. Whispers spread immediately. She's beautiful. So that's the new queen. I've never seen anyone so graceful. Adrian stood near the entrance the moment he saw her. Everything else disappeared. He couldn't breathe. David leaned closer. You should close your mouth. Adrian blinked. What? You're staring. Adrian looked away. Too late. Lucy had already noticed. Her cheeks turned pink. Throughout the evening, dozens of noblemen approached Lucy, complimenting her, asking her to dance. Adrian watched from across the ballroom. Each smile she gave someone else made something uncomfortable twist inside his chest. David noticed immediately. Oh, Adrian frowned. What? You're jealous. I am not. You absolutely are. I'm simply... He searched for an excuse. Observing. David laughed. Right. Moments later, a young duke bowed before Lucy. Your Majesty, she smiled politely, would you honor me with a dance? Lucy hesitated. Before she could answer, a calm voice interrupted. She's already promised this dance? Everyone turned Adrian. Lucy stared at him, confused. She had never promised him anything. Adrian walked toward her, his hand extended. If you'll allow me. Lucy looked into his eyes. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. I'd love to. Soft music filled the ballroom. Adrian gently guided her onto the dance floor. His hand rested carefully against her waist. Her hand rested on his shoulder. The distance between them suddenly felt impossibly small. Lucy smiled nervously. I didn't know you danced. I don't. She lochered. Then why are we here? Adrian looked directly into her eyes. Because I couldn't bear watching another man hold you. Silence. Lucy forgot every step, every sound, every person watching. Her heart raced wildly. Adrian. He realized what he'd just admitted. His ears turned slightly red. But he didn't take it back. Instead, he pulled her just a little closer, not enough to frighten her, just enough for her to hear his heartbeat. It was racing, too. The music slowed. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light. Every noble watched as Adrian and Lucy stood together in the center of the dance floor. His hand rested gently on her waist. Her fingers remained intertwined with his. Neither wanted the moment to end. The final note faded. Applause filled the ballroom, yet neither of them moved. Adrian looked into Lucy's eyes. Quietly, he whispered, "I want to be the only one allowed this close to you." Lucy felt her heart stop. What? Adrian lowered his eyes, almost embarrassed. "I've spent months pretending none of this mattered." A pause. "But every time another man looked at you, another pause, it felt like I couldn't breathe." Lucy stared at him, unable to speak. Adrian gently took her hand. "Come with me." Together, they slipped away from the ballroom, past the music, past the laughter, past the curious eyes, until they reached the palace balcony. The night sky stretched endlessly above them. Stars glittered across the heavens. A cool breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers through the gardens below. Neither spoke at first. The silence was peaceful. Then Adrian finally found the courage. "I owe you the truth." Lucy turned toward him, listening. "When our families arranged this marriage," he swallowed, "when I saw you, I believed you deserved someone better." Lucy's eyebrows knitted together. "What?" "I've never been good with people." His voice was quiet. "I don't know how to comfort someone. I don't know how to express what I feel. I don't know how to love the way other men do." He laughed bitterly. "So I convinced myself, that staying away from you was the kindest thing I could do." Lucy's eyes slowly filled with tears. "I watched you smile. I watched you cry. I watched you eat alone. I watched you sleep after the storm. And every single day," his voice cracked, "I wanted to walk to you. I wanted to hold you. I wanted to tell you everything. But I was afraid," Lucy whispered. "Afraid of what?" He looked directly into her eyes. "That one day you'd see me the way I see myself." Silence. "I thought someone as kind as you deserved a man stronger. A man more confident. A man who wasn't broken." Fresh tears rolled down Lucy's cheeks. She slowly stepped closer. "So all this time, you stayed away because you never believed someone could truly love you?" Adrian nodded, ashamed. "I'm sorry." Lucy smiled through her tears, a beautiful, heartbreaking smile. "You foolish man." Adrian blinked. She gently placed her hand against his face. "I never wanted a perfect prince." Another tear escaped. "I only wanted my husband." Adrian's entire world stopped. Lucy continued. "I thought you hated me. I cried every night because I believed I wasn't beautiful enough, or smart enough, or interesting enough." Her voice trembled. "But all along, you were fighting yourself." Adrian closed his eyes. Pain filled every word he spoke. "I heard you crying." Lucy froze. "Every night." Another pause. "And I hated myself because I couldn't find the courage to open your door." Tears finally escaped his own eyes. "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry for every tear you cried because of me." Lucy couldn't hold back anymore. She wrapped both arms around him, holding him tightly, as though trying to gather every broken piece of his heart. "You don't have to apologize anymore," she whispered. "I'm here." For the first time in years, Adrian hugged someone back. Not awkwardly, not hesitantly, completely. His arms tightened around her, like he'd been waiting his entire life for this moment. "I love you." The words escaped before fear could stop them. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe the night you smiled at breakfast. Maybe the night of the storm. Maybe the first day you walked into this palace. But I love you." Lucy's tears became laughter, soft, happy laughter. I've loved you for much longer than you realize. She rose onto her toes, their foreheads touched. I love you too. Slowly, Adrian lifted one trembling hand, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. May I? Lucy smiled. You don't have to ask. Their lips met, slowly, tenderly, a kiss filled with everything they had never said, every lonely night, every silent glance, every hidden feeling. Inside the ballroom, David quietly stepped onto the balcony doorway. He stopped, smiled, then turned around without making a sound, leaving them alone, exactly as they deserved. Minutes later, Adrian intertwined his fingers with Lucy's. He looked at her with certainty. Shall we go back? Lucy smiled. Together. He nodded. Always. Hand in hand, they walked back into the ballroom, not as strangers forced into marriage, not as two lonely people living beneath the same roof, but as husband and wife, partners, best friends, and soulmates. Adrian spent years believing love required perfection. Lucy spent years believing she wasn't enough to be loved. They were both wrong. Sometimes, love isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with grand speeches or dramatic promises. Sometimes, it waits quietly behind fear, until one person finds the courage to reach for another. That night, Adrian didn't just take Lucy's hand. He finally opened his heart. And Lucy finally found the home she had been searching for all her life. Together, they walked toward a future without fear, without loneliness, without distance, only love. The end.